Hi, I'm Sherry Levitin Katz. Welcome to my tape program entitled The Psychology of the Sales Presentation, or Quieting the Reptile Within. As you'll see in the following segment, you may have different steps of the sales presentation as other resorts. What's important is that you follow the steps that your managers give you, and more importantly, that you understand the psychology behind the steps. In this tape program, for the first time ever, we'll look at not only the sales process, but the buying process. Now join me for the psychology of the sales presentation. We actually train all over the world. We train in 40 countries and on 5 continents in timeshare. We are absolutely specific to timeshare. In fact, we're the only and largest training company. I guess if you're the only one, you're the largest, right? That's easy. Specific to vacation ownership, because that's what we do. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our goal is to help you with the system to make more money and do it ethically. And that's at the cornerstone of everything we teach. We believe that this is the greatest product in the world. And it has incredible benefits for the end user. It has incredible benefits for those of us who want to make a career of this, which we'll be talking about. And we can sell it ethically. Don't salespeople sometimes have a bad reputation? But not at Shell, and certainly that's not anything that we talk about. In fact, we talk about how to have the utmost integrity in everything you do. And you'll find that you not only sell more, but you'll have much greater satisfaction, and you'll be able to build an incredible career. So again, I just want to thank you and tell you how happy I am to be here. I started off as enthusiastic as all of you are here today. I started off just as excited, with just as much hope, with just as much innocence, building just as much rapport. And pretty soon, the old timers got a hold of me and started saying, doing it that way, try this way. And I started listening to negativity. Now, I know you don't have that at Shell, okay? But where I was, there was negativity in the sales lounge. Y'all ever heard of that? Probably not. Not here. But in other resorts, it happens. So I started listening to them. Do it this way, do it that way. And pretty soon, I too was a 10, 12% closer. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was not born a salesperson. I started off good. It was sort of a fluky thing. And then I went back down. And for the next 6 years, I was very, very average. So average that I was a little too high maintenance for how average I was. But they couldn't really fire me either, because I was sort of in the middle of the line. I was one of those middle-of-the-road producers from 1984 till 1990. And it was in 1990 that I met the man who would become my mentor. And that's when my career changed forever. And he told me, he said, Sherry, here's the thing about selling and learning to sell timeshare. He said, there is a system for this thing called selling timeshare. When you start off, it's very easy to make it off enthusiasm alone. How many of you have been here for less than 60 days? Can I see a show of hands? Okay? How many of you have 3 sales or more? Can I see a show of hands that have been here less than 60 days? Okay? How long ago did you start?
3 weeks.
3 weeks ago. And you had 3 sales?
More than that.
4 sales? Let's give them a hand. Nice. How about you? How many sales?
6 weeks. I don't know.
She can't even keep track of them all. I knew she was a hitter. 11 sales. Let's give her a hand. It's very normal, by the way. Closing what, about 30%? Yeah, that's very normal. She doesn't even know. I love that. But he said, what happens is when you're new, very often, you can make it off enthusiasm alone because you're so excited. But there comes a time when you need to learn the system. Just like anything else in life, any other talent, any other discipline, there is a system for this thing called selling timeshare. And see, for me, here's what happened to me. For years, I had been told random cliches, but nobody ever taught me the system. Let me give you an example. I was told things like, tell me if you've heard any of these, for those of you who have been in sales. Keep it simple, stupid. You heard that one? Yeah, here was my problem. I hear you. How do I do that? What is the technology for keeping it simple, stupid? How do you do that? Okay? Or I love this one, sell, don't tell. You heard that one? How do you do that? How do you do that? Or do a good discovery. You heard that? What's a good discovery? What's the system? Okay? Or I love this one, sell emotionally. For years I'd heard that, but I didn't know, nobody told me how to do it. I mean, what does that mean, sell emotionally? Does that mean, please buy, please, please? That didn't work. So I had been told to do all these things, but nobody ever told me how to do them. That's all we really do. That's all my company does. And I'm going to tell you something right now, okay? With all the bosses in the room, I'm going to tell you right now, I do not have a new way for selling timeshare. If that's what you think, you're wrong. I don't have a new way. I don't even have a new way for selling. Because here's what I believe. I believe if you're a good salesperson, which you obviously are, Shell doesn't hire bad salespeople. If you're a good salesperson, you're doing the right thing 80 to 90% of the time. 80, 90% of the time, you're doing it right. You had training, you're doing it right. Here's the problem. We don't always know what it is we're doing right. Proof of that is, who here has ever had a great month? Like, I don't know, $100,000 or more. Can I see a show of hands? $100,000. Sudi, definitely. Dane, definitely. Okay, now keep your hands up. Look around the room. Keep your hands up. Now, of those people that have done 100,000 or more, how many of you the next month maybe did 10,000? Right. Or negative because you had rescissions. Okay? And you swear you didn't change your presentation, don't you? You didn't change your presentation. Here's the problem. When we're doing it right, we're using certain distinctions for selling. We're doing the system. The problem is when we're not doing it right, since we didn't have names for what it is we were doing, we go into a slump. All we do, all our company does is we give names and a system to what it is we've been taught to do in sales. For example, we don't just say do a good discovery, we say there's 3 goals to a good discovery. Okay? We don't just say tell more third-party stories. Y'all heard to tell third-party stories? Okay, did you know there's 5 rules to a good one? And if you're not doing all 5, you're going to miss something. I love this one. I had always been taught to use trial closes. You heard that? In any sales. Did you know there's 3 types? Did you know? Well, I can tell you right now, one of them gets compliance, which means you can use it all you want, and the person will go, yeah, that's great, The second kind gets agreement, which means, Can you see why so many people would use it? Could you see how it would benefit you and your family? Would you like to become an owner today? I need to think about it. Because we used a trial close that got compliance and not commitment. So what we do is we systematize what it is you've been taught to do all your career. We give it a name, and then through audio and visual means, it becomes second nature to you, and you know the system. So that when you're talking to a client, you're not thinking of the 5 rules of a good third-party story. It's automatic, and you can start watching their body language and really being there for them because you know your lines. It's like an actor who knows their lines so well, they can start feeling the emotion. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's what we're going to do over the next couple of days, 4 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow. I'm going to teach you the 3 most important steps of the system. Okay? They're absolutely, for somebody who's brand new, less than 90 days, I'm going to teach you the 3 most important steps of any sales presentation. Does that sound like a deal? Okay, great. I'd like everybody just on the back of this paper, I'm going to give you an exercise, and I would like you to work in your tables. That's fine. Pick a partner, whatever. And you've had a little bit of training already, haven't you? Haven't you done a little bit of training here? Okay, great. So this should be very easy for you. What I'd like you to do is write down the steps of your sales process. What are the steps of your presentation? Go ahead and work as a table. You know, I'll give you a hint. It probably starts with the greeting. Just a guess. Just a guess. There's probably a discovery in there somewhere as well. So go ahead and start that if you will. What do we have for the steps of the sales process? Who'd like to share with me what they've written down? The steps of the sales process. Yes. Greeting. Okay, good. What's next? Okay, now. Okay. Okay, let me stop. Does anybody have anything different? You might.
Make a friend.
Okay. I'm going to let you finish. Okay, good. Go on.
Where am I?
Intent.
Okay. For discovery.
Discovery. Okay. Okay, do y'all show the movie? Okay. Has anybody not shown the movie ever? Come on, come on, come on. This isn't the Howard thing. We're getting it on video. Let me tell you something. Always show the video. Always show the video, and here's why. The video never has a bad day. Okay? No, truly. There was thousands and thousands of dollars put into having the right emotional video that's going to change the emotional state of the customer. Sometimes we have a bad day, you know, we didn't sleep a lot, we're a little edgy, haven't had a sale in a while, and what can happen is we're having a bad day. The movie doesn't. The movie doesn't have a bad hair day, it doesn't smell, it's a good thing, okay? So you should always show the movie, and we'll talk in subsequent trainings about how to set that up, but always show that movie. Okay, great. What else? Okay, good. But you know what's interesting? You can see, and you're all just in training now, how if you miss a step, and it's easy, isn't it? It's not that hard to miss a step. What might happen if you miss a step like financial sense? What could happen?
Blow the deal.
How? How does that blow the deal? Well, what objection are they going to have at the end? Yeah, no value. I could do this cheaper. What if you left out company credibility? Do you see how every step is going to tie in to your inability to close? This is very, very important. We think, oh, that's just the warm-up or the company credibility. I want to get on to the close. But in reality, every step helps you close, and the omission of a step hinders your ability to close. I want you to understand that concept. The sale can be made at any step of the presentation and can be lost in any step of the presentation if we don't do it correctly. What happens if we sort of omit that company credibility part? What can happen? What's the objection at the back end?
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust. And what does it come out like? What do you hear at the end? What's the sentence you hear? I want to research your company. What else?
Better companies out there.
Pardon? Yeah, there's better companies. We're just shopping. This is the first one we've seen. So we have to go through every single step, and in later trainings we'll talk about and trial close to make sure that they buy in that this is the best company, and we'll talk about that later. Okay? But yeah, we cannot miss a step. The most important thing I can tell you before we begin talking about the greeting and the warm-up is this. The sale can be made any step along the way. I'm going to tell you a quick story that one of our trainers tells, Terry Ferrara. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're going grocery shopping. For some of you, this may be a stretch, but I want you to imagine for a moment that you're going grocery shopping and you've got a list, and on that list is Coca-Cola, green beans, and tortillas. Okay, can you go with me on that? Coca-Cola, green beans, and tortillas. You go into the market down the way. What's the nearest market here? Safeway. There's a Safeway here. What else? Albertsons. So you're going to Albertsons, and you see the tortillas, and you take the tortillas and you put them in the cart. Okay? You see the Coca-Cola, you put it in the cart, and there's the green beans, and you put the green beans in the cart. Now you go along, and of course you're going to put some more things in the cart because there's great marketing in Albertsons. And then you get to the checkout counter. She rings up the total. It's $32.46. You give her your Albertsons card. Oh boy, you saved 10%. Okay? You write a check for the whole amount, and you leave with your groceries. Okay, when did you purchase the green beans?
At the moment you pick them up off the shelf.
Okay, Matt says you purchased the green beans at the cash register. Okay? You say, Ron, that you purchased them when you put them in the cart. When did you purchase the green beans? When you put them on the list. How long ago did that happen? Before you ever what? Before you ever left the house. I'm going to tell you something. Most people don't decide to buy your product the moment they're sitting in front of the TO and get the price. They decided way before they got to the cash register whether they were going to buy it or not, didn't they? Does that make sense? I mean, some people actually make the decision at the end because money's so tight, but a lot of people make the decision well before then. And we see the buying signals, don't we? What does a buying signal look like? Like they're out on the golf course. What's a buying signal? How do we know they bought the green beans? How do we know?
They ask questions.
They ask questions. Good. How else do we know? They nod their head. They come up on the table.
They do most of the talking.
Guys, the greeting and the warm-up can actually be a place where they decide to buy your product. Don't miss it. Don't skip it. The company credibility may be where they decide to buy your product. Don't miss it. Don't skip it. And if you do skip it, that's where they decide not to buy your product. So we have to go through each step of the sales presentation. It's critical. We can't forget. Let's all write in the steps of our presentation. Every single step is designed, okay, to get you to a yes decision today. And failure to do a step will result in some sort of an objection, okay? So, are we all in sync on the steps of the sales presentation? Does everybody feel good about that? Yeah? Okay, great. What I'd like you to do is take exactly 2 minutes. We've written down the steps of the sales process. On another page, I'd like you to write down the steps of the buying process. Okay? I'll be back in 2 minutes. The steps of the buying process. We spent a long time writing down the steps of the sales presentation and the sales process. So now let's talk about the steps of the buying process. Who can tell me what they are? Yeah.
Number one would be showing up for the presentation.
Okay, good. Showing up for the presentation.
Green beans on their list before.
Yeah, okay, good. Showing up for the presentation. Excellent. Good. What else? The packed. A lot of them have a pack, don't they? Okay, great. You guys are doing great. What else?
What was that?
The packed. Okay? So I'm going to start writing down things. I'm going to start writing down words. This is going to be probably the most interesting segment right now you've ever had in sales. We've been doing some exciting research over the last year into how people buy. So I'm very excited to present this to you. And I've never presented it before. So I'm really psyched. But let's talk about it. Okay, so they're showing up. And then we've got the packed. What else? Apprehension. Great. What else? The steps of the buying process. You're all right. But here's what I believe. We spend an awful lot of energy talking about the sales process, but not nearly enough time discussing the buying process. Because after all, it's not so important how we sell as how our customers buy. And I can assure you, those people that understand the mind of the buyer are going to sell twice as much as anybody else. Because if we just sell the way we've always been taught to sell, a certain amount of people are going to naturally buy our product. But when we start understanding the way people buy and why they do what they do, that's when we become very, very powerful. So what we've done is we've been researching as a company and talking to literally some brain specialists, reading books on the human brain, talking to psychologists about how the human brain works. And I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes and I'm going to give you a lesson on the human brain. And this is very, very fascinating to me because, after all, what could be more important than what they're thinking? What's going on? What goes on in their brain? And more importantly, what's going on in our brain and how do we control that? And according to modern theory on the brain. There's been research that there's actually 3 parts of the human brain. The 3 sections of the human brain are the amygdala, okay, which we're going to call the reptilian brain, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. The second part of the brain, let's call instead of the visual cortex, let's call it the midbrain. It's a little easier to remember. And the third part of the brain is the neocortex. And in human beings, they all function very differently. Now, the reason that we call the amygdala the reptilian brain is because that's really the only brain that reptiles have. Okay? Reptiles don't have an emotional and an intellectual brain. Okay? They just have one brain. And that amygdala is where, or the reptilian brain, is the survival function of our brain. And I've brought my mascot, Oscar, here to talk about the reptilian brain. Okay? The reptilian brain in reptiles and in humans is where our fight or flight response mechanism is held. And obviously, it's necessary for survival. So for instance, when a human being finds that they're in danger, they instantly go into the reptilian brain and fight or flight. A mammal does the same thing. Let's take an antelope. Okay, can everybody picture an antelope? Okay, picture an antelope. When an antelope's out in the wild, let's say it sees its predator. Who can tell me what the predator is of an antelope? Can anybody? Yes.
Lion.
A lion, very good. I don't know how you got that, okay? So it's a lion. Now, when an antelope sees its predator, the lion, it reacts automatically. It goes automatically to its reptilian brain. It doesn't sit there and think, whoa, dude, nice mane. I mean, that's really sweet. No, it's an automatic survival fight or flight response. The antelope, when it sees its predator, is either going to fight the lion, or if it's smart, it's going to run. Okay, it's going to run away. Human beings are the same way. When we go into fear, whether it's physical fear or emotional fear, we automatically go into the reptilian portion of our brain. You can see how interesting this is going to get. Okay? It's an automatic response. Now, there's 2 other parts of the human brain. The other part of the human brain is called the midbrain. Okay? Now, in the midbrain is where we house emotion. That's where we have good feelings. It's in the midbrain where we might feel sentimental, happy, in love. In fact, it's the midbrain that takes over. Tell me if you've ever had this experience. You're driving in the car, and all of a sudden a song comes on the radio that maybe you remember from high school or junior high, or for those of you that are older, from college. And all of a sudden you're driving in the car, this song comes on the radio, you're singing at the top of your lungs, you're somewhere completely different, and all of a sudden you're home and you have no idea how you got there. Okay, have y'all had that experience? Where you're completely transported in space and in time, and all of a sudden you have this whole other memory. That's your midbrain. Okay? That's where we fall in love. That's where we have an emotional reaction. Okay? Now, that can be bad emotions too. It's not necessarily good emotions. So any negative emotions, any sadness, but that is our emotional brain. That's called the midbrain. The third brain that human beings have is called the neocortex. That's the intellectual brain. That's where we problem solve. That's where we understand complex information. If you were ever smart enough to be in algebra or geometry, you were definitely in your neocortex. When you're trying to read reports and figure out marketing strategies and you're looking at the numbers, what brain are you in? You're definitely in your neocortex. Okay? When you're out at a football game having a great time singing the national anthem, what brain are you in? The midbrain. When you're in a dark alley in New York City and some guy comes up with a club, what brain do you go into? The reptilian brain. Very, very good. Now, as I said, most lower forms of animals, reptiles, don't even have a midbrain. and a neocortex. They just act on survival instinct. That's why, by the way, that's why reptiles don't make good pets. Okay, do you know many people that have reptiles for pets? Really? I mean, a couple of people do, but they're never going to come home and like lick your face when you get home at night. Okay, pardon?
They just bite you.
Yeah, if they do, I'd be very impressed. Okay, because they don't have emotion. So obviously dogs have a little bit of a midbrain. But, you know, Oscar really doesn't show a lot of emotion. You know, if you have a bad day, he's not going to like sit on your lap. Okay? You know, if you're a little down, you know, he's probably not going to nuzzle up by the TV with you. Okay? So Oscar's probably not going to do any of that. Okay? Human beings vacillate between the three parts of the brain, but here's the most important thing I'm going to tell you about the triune theory of the brain, and that is this. It is impossible to be in two parts of your brain at the same time. It's a physical impossibility, which means when we're in the reptilian brain, we can't possibly process or problem solve or understand how things work. We're scared. We are going to go into an automatic response system of fight or flight. No matter how interesting the information is, no matter how good the deal is, our minds are saying leave or fight. Because the brain perceives emotional fear in exactly the same way as physical fear. It doesn't know the difference. Is this making sense? Okay? The brain, now here's another interesting fact. We can't possibly understand material and get into our neocortex unless we pass through, it's like a floor in an elevator, the midbrain. So what that means is, in order for us to understand something logically, we have to be in a good emotional state. We have to have passed through the midbrain. So we can't be in two parts of the brain at once, and we can't go upshift from the reptilian brain to the neocortex. We have to stop on the midbrain floor, if you will. Pretty interesting stuff, isn't it? Very interesting stuff. Think about for a moment, and I just want you to do an exercise, and I want you to tell a partner about the last time that you went into your reptilian brain and how you responded. The last time, it might have been physical fear or it might have been emotional fear. We've all had it. And unfortunately, sometimes we put ourselves there when we don't need to be there. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We put ourselves in our reptilian brain when we don't need to be there at all. And you can see how much it hinders our productivity. Okay? But I want you to pick a partner and talk about the last time that you were in your reptilian brain and how you reacted. I'm guessing I'm going to hear some very interesting stories. So take just a moment and do that for me, if you will. Okay, another fight or flight response. Yeah?
You'd be driving in your car, and all of a sudden it might be dark, and all of a sudden cop lights come on behind you.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it.
Or an ambulance or anything.
Right.
And you instantly think it's you. It could be, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but...
Now, here's the interesting thing about when we go into our reptilian brain, and I want you to think about this, and obviously we're going to relate this to the sales process, okay? You just mentioned a policeman is behind you, okay? You see the lights. You know you're not even speeding or doing anything wrong, or maybe you are speeding, and then that's even worse, or maybe you are doing something wrong, okay? And then all of a sudden, what happens? Is there a physical change in your body?
Yes.
What happens?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline. There is actually adrenaline and cortisone that is released in your body. There is a physical change because what happens is the body is an amazing thing and it's preparing you to fight or flight. So what the adrenaline helps you to do is if you needed to run, if you needed to get into a chase with the policeman, which hopefully you won't do, okay? But think about our survival. Think about when, thousands of years ago when we needed to survive in the wild. We needed that adrenaline and that cortisol because maybe we needed to run faster. Maybe we needed to jump higher. An animal needs that burst of adrenaline. What's happening is, and all the blood is going to your muscles. It's going out of your organs. There is an absolute physical response. That's why when we keep going into our amygdala, we're stressed. Okay, it's that constant release of adrenaline that pretty soon stresses our bodies. Okay, because we unnecessarily go into our reptilian brain. Okay, cop doesn't pull you over, but 10 seconds later, what's happening? Physically, what's going on? Cop goes on to somebody else. Don't we still have the effects? How do we feel? We're shaking. What else is happening physically? What's happening?
More alert.
More alert, a little dizzy? Good. What else? Start to sweat.
Breathing.
Breathing gets faster. Our heart beats faster. Okay? These are all automatic physical responses to what happens when we go into our reptilian brain. Excellent. Let's give them a hand. Excellent. Okay. What else happens? Who else can give me an example of when they went into their reptilian brain? Oscar would like to know. What happens? Yeah.
I had a meeting in Starbucks yesterday.
You had a meeting in Starbucks. That
and
sounds terrifying.
The person was not there, late, so I bought a newspaper and put it on the table. And here comes my meeting partner, and he says, I want to buy you coffee. So we get up and go in. He picks up his briefcase. I left my paper on the table. So we get our coffee, and I come back, and there's a guy sitting at my table. And I said, sir, that's my table. And he says, it doesn't have your name on it. I says, that is my paper. And he looked at me, and I thought, okay, fight or flight, what's worth it? He got up and left and growled at me, but he left my paper, and we sat at the table.
So did he fight or flight? What did he do?
He flight.
He flew. Okay, now could there have been a...
Fight.
Absolutely, there could have, couldn't there?
I think I would have flighted.
Okay, you would have flighted. Very
He was
good.
big- he was bigger
That's
than
smart.
me.
Okay,
He
good.
was bigger than me.
All right, so there's some interesting things that happen when we go into our reptilian brain, and you can start to see how we don't just do it when there's a real threat, we do it when there's a perceived threat. Now, this is a pretty amazing concept to me. When I started overlapping this concept with the buying process and I started thinking about really the ingenious things we do in a timeshare presentation, how we take somebody who's literally in their reptilian brain and within the course of 90 minutes, we move them to their midbrain, then we move them to their neocortex, then we actually have to get them a little bit back into their reptilian brain because they have to be scared if they don't buy it, they're going to lose it. I mean, this is a dance. I'm going to call it the dance of the reptile. This is a dance. We've got to dance with their reptile through the entire presentation. And when I think of that, I think of all the implications that this knowledge has. It's pretty amazing that the steps of our presentation work so well. What I want you to do right now, because I think this is very powerful information, like I said before, I'm really excited about how it makes sense of everything we've ever been taught. I want you to take 5 whole minutes, and at each table, I want you to come up with 3 implications of this information. How can you apply this information to the sales process? What 3 things occur to you? You might want to look at the closing process. What's happening in the closing process? You did a great job of looking at how it affects people all the way through, but now that you understand the human brain, how does it intersect with the buying process and the sales process? And what mistakes might we make that keep people in their reptile or throw them back in their reptile, and when does it happen? So take 5 minutes, and I want to see which table can come up with the best 3 examples. And I will give everyone at the table chips who can come up with the best 3 examples. Okay, go ahead and start. Who would like to share how this triune theory of the human brain might interplay with the buying and the sales process? Who'd like to come up and share? Blake, you want to come up?
Sure.
5 chips. That's a lot of chips. You just stand to my right.
Okay.
You get the chips after.
I want the chips first.
Nope. You don't get the gift first.
Okay.
Got to take the tour.
We thought that the first step is to get rid of that reptilian brain. And there's a lot of things going on there. One is to make them feel like they trust you right off the bat. And you can do that through humility.
Okay.
It's one of the things we worked on. Sense of humor. Get them to laugh. Always works if you can wind some kind of funniness into it. assure them that it's not a pressure situation. Let them know right up front it's not what we do.
Okay, yeah, isn't that why what he's saying is, and again, tie in the steps of the presentation. The warm-up's designed to do what? To get them out of their reptilian brain. It's designed to do that. The statement of intent is designed to do what? To do what? Get rid of their fear. The fear is high when they don't know what to expect. When we give a good statement of intent and we give them the agenda, they start getting out of their reptilian brain. Again, that's why we can't skip a step. Excellent. What else?
One of the important things in that stage, we think, is commonalities. If you can find anything in common with them, it almost doesn't matter what it is to get them to talk.
So a commonality is a key ingredient of a warm-up, and in just a moment we're going to go through the distinctions of a greeting and warm-up. Excellent.
Then the second part we thought was to incite the midbrain.
Okay.
So create passion, paint word pictures, find out what they like and embellish it. One of the things that Dane always teaches is, and we think this is a great one, is to throw in baby negatives.
Beautiful.
To throw in some little things that are wrong. All of a sudden they trust you when you tell them what's great about it.
Great.
Yeah. And then the last one then is get them back into the logic mode. And once you've got them in that emotional mode, they'll listen to you about the logic.
Excellent. Do you see what happens? And as we go through the warm-up, excellent. Let's give them 5 chips. Excellent. One of the biggest mistakes we make is instead of doing a warm-up and getting them out of the reptilian brain, we start talking to them about points. We're trying to get them into the neocortex and they're still in their amygdala. No wonder that doesn't work. No wonder we're supposed to really do a warm-up. Are you seeing how this all makes sense? And I know this is a different way of looking at it, but here's why I think this concept should be a key part of any new hire training, or any training for that matter, is this. There is a tendency to skip steps. We saw that, to think, oh, I don't want to do a warm-up, I want to just get to the discovery. Well, you can't. Or what's worse, I don't want to do a warm-up or a discovery. I can't wait to show them how this program works. I got to show them points. They've only seen timeshare before. So we start showing them how they can get airfares with points, how they can go to Maui with points, all these cool things they can do with points, and they're sitting there thinking, fight or flight. They can't go into their emotional brain and into their neocortex, especially until they get out of their amygdala. Okay, great. One more, and then we'll move on to the distinctions of the warm-up. Yeah, come on up.
We put the warm-up to build rapport. It's good to tell a joke right off the bat, just to kind of break the ice. If you can get a good warm-up and get them talking more than, if they're doing 90% of the talking and you're doing 10%, I think that's really important. You lead them into the midbrain with like asking them what was their best vacation and why, asking them third-party questions, like how did that make you feel? Make them do most of the talking, do some baby takeaways.
Great.
And then you just back it up. Always back it up with logic, in a way.
Excellent. You know, Brian said something, and I want to point this out as we get into discovery tomorrow. By the way, the discovery portion we're going to do tomorrow is everybody's favorite. Let's give him 5 chips. Thank you. He's just dying to get down. There's something I'm going to bring up now. A lot of people think that the goal of the discovery is just for us to get information. Because if we can just get the information, we can sell them. There's a whole nother goal of the discovery, and we'll refer back to that, and that is for them to go to their midbrain. We're trying to change their emotional state in that discovery. Okay, we need to do that. So by asking the right questions, they're going to actually get transported to another time. If I were to ask you to tell me about the greatest day of your life, you're going to all of a sudden go to your midbrain. When I ask you to recount how when salespeople say in the discovery, how'd you two meet? I want you to watch them physically go into their midbrain. Tell me about your best vacation. It's not just for us to get the information. It's for them to have that necessary emotional state change. That's why you can never say, fill out this survey sheet, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette, I'll be back. How much of a state change are they going to have while I'm outside and they're filling out a form? We have to get them in their midbrain so that they can start experiencing the resort. They can remember old memories. And here's another very interesting thing. When we're in a certain emotional state, we tend to remember other times like it. And I assure you, if they're in their amygdala, they're not buying anything today. I want to bring up one more section that's very critical. Very often we get them out of their reptilian brain, we get them into the midbrain, they're excited. Everything's wonderful. Then all of a sudden, at the close, what can start to happen? What can happen at the close? Yeah.
When there's confrontation and they go back into that fight or flight.
They can go right back. So just because we get them out of the reptilian brain at the middle doesn't mean they don't go back there at the end, does it? And we talk to TOs and closers about this all the time. They can slip right back into their reptilian brain, can't they? And there's things that we can do that put them into their reptilian brain. We ask them to buy at the end, they say they want to think about it. What do you mean you need to think about it? And all of a sudden they go right back into their reptilian brain, don't they? And we lose them. And if this has ever happened to you, or if you've ever seen this, this is fight or flight. It's at the end of the presentation, the customer says they need to think about it. We start asking them, what do you mean you need to think about it? And pretty soon, one of two things happens. By the time you get the TO, where'd they go? No, they were just here. I don't know, they get their gift and they're gone. That's flight. Fight sounds something like this. What do you mean I have to buy today? Are you telling me I can't get the same deal tomorrow? What kind of high pressure place is this? That's fight. So that can happen all throughout the presentation. So let's just go back to the steps of the presentation before we go into the warm-up. And you might want to write down that in the greeting, the warm-up, the statement of intent, your credibility statement, which is in there, and the discovery, the whole goal of the first three steps of the presentation, the greeting, the warm-up, and the intent, is to get them out of the reptilian brain. That's the whole goal. You've got to. In the discovery, through our questioning, we start getting them into the midbrain, don't we? We start finding out their emotional motivators. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Which means we can spend the whole next portion, the company credibility, the financial logic, in the neocortex. But unless we've opened them up into the midbrain, they won't understand the financial logic. They won't understand the T-pitch. And then we're always sprinkling that midbrain stuff back in there. It's emotion, logic, emotion, logic. Third-party stories, emotion. Logic, rent versus own. Get them to experience the property tour. 5 senses, midbrain, emotion, the money. Does that make sense? But I thought it very, very critical that we understand first that we have to get them out of their reptilian brain. Now, let me just close this section with this, and then we'll take a break and talk about the warm-up. Tomorrow we talk about the best part, that's the discovery. Tomorrow's going to be like a breakthrough day for you, okay? But let me just say this. Why is it so hard sometimes to get people out of their reptilian brain? Why can it be hard for us?
Bad experiences they may have already had.
Bad experiences they've already had? That's one. Good. Maybe they've had a bad experience, so it's very hard. And like you said, a very good way to get them out of that is through baby negatives. So they may have had bad experiences. Good. What else? What else? Why else is it hard sometimes to get them out of their reptilian brain?
Bad experiences they've heard.
Okay, bad experience they've had or heard. Okay, good. Why else?
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. Good. What? Oh, we're not listening to them. Okay, they're scared.
Maybe we're in our reptilian brain.
Thank you. This is all true. How often do we pick up a tour and we're in our reptilian brain.
Too often.
Don't we? Because what's going on for us emotionally? What's going on for us?
Too many minds.
Dollar signs.
Dollar signs?
Too many minds.
Too many minds? We're scared we won't make a sale. We're scared of rejection. So what happens is we're in our fear zone. I can assure you this, we cannot change the emotional state of the customer if we don't know how to change and control our own. That's your biggest challenge as a salesperson, is managing your emotional state. I'm going to tell you a quick story about how important it is to manage your emotional state and about the time and the energy that it takes. I was on my honeymoon. This was 1.5 years ago. And like I said, I was actually at a Shell property. That's how much I like your resort. Hawaii is my favorite place in the world. So that's where we went on our honeymoon. And we were first in Maui, and then we went to your property in Kauai, and we stayed at a wonderful place. It actually wasn't a timeshare. It's called the Hana Ranch. Have any of you heard of it? We stayed there first, and then we went to your resort. Beautiful. And what happened is we went into an art shop. And, there's just like a nice little arts and crafts shop outside where we were staying. And my husband, Stephen, fell in love with a bowl. Okay? And I may even have a picture of this bowl. Let me see if I have it in here. I think I do. There it is. Okay? So he fell in. This is a picture of the bowl. This is the actual bowl. And he falls absolutely in love with this bowl. And I've never known him to like art before, but it's one of these sort of wood translucent things. And he goes to the other end of the art gallery. And so I'm thinking, maybe I'll buy him the bowl. It's our honeymoon, and this is a nice wedding present, and he loves the bowl. And so when he's on the other side and the salesman comes around, I said, how much for the bowl? And the salesman looks at me and he says, it's $5. Now, I don't know much about art, okay? I know nothing about art. So I'm thinking, $5 what? Okay, and I'm a little embarrassed to ask. I mean, is it $5 what? So I get the courage up and I say, $5 what? And he looks back at me and he says, $5,000. I said, $5,000 for a bowl? Right, fight or flight. I said, $5,000 for a bowl? I said, and I'm thinking, how can this be? Maybe there's some intricate process that I know nothing about, like they age the tree and they dry it out and what could the process possibly be? So I said to him, let me just ask you, how long does it take this artist to create such a piece of art? How long does it take? And he looks at me with a straight face and he says, 30 years. I said, 30 years? And he says, yeah, 30 years to be good enough to do it in 4 hours. Wow. And I thought about that for a moment, and I thought, wow, that's a master. That's what a master is. And the reason I tell you that story is, to control our emotional state, it's not just the 90-minute tour that counts. It's everything we do before that 90 minutes. To be really good in this business, to be able to control our own emotional state, is something that takes ongoing practice and an ongoing commitment. It's the ability to mentally leave your problems outside the door. As my mentor used to say, don't worry, they'll be there when you get back. Just check them in outside the door. They'll be there when you get back. It's having the patience. It's having the ability to, it's not only preparing for your emotional state, it's preparing your mental state. It's knowing the product. It's knowing the competition. It's all the hours before the 90 minutes. And it is, too, also having the ability to change and control your own emotional state. And I'm going to tell you the best way to control your emotional state and have a positive attitude. And this may sound simple, but as Terry Ferrara says, it's simple, but if you're not doing it, it's advanced. So I want you to think about this for a moment. There's a simple way to take your own mind, because you may not realize this, but we are constantly going into our reptilian brain all day long. That's called stress. That's what stress is. We go into it all the time. And the more we go into it, the less we have control of our own emotions. If we don't have control of our own emotions, how can we be effective? We can't. But we fly into it all the time. We fly into it when we think there's a cop. We fly into it when we think there's a bill overdue. We fly into it when a friend calls and we forgot to do something. We fly into it when we think I better get this sale or I'm not going to be able to make my car payment. We fly into it when we're number one and we're scared we're going to get knocked down to number two. We fly into it when we look at the budgets and we think, oh my God, I'm not going to make budget. My costs are too high. We're flying into it constantly and our heart rate goes up and we get exasperated and we can't possibly find solutions or be creative if we're in our reptilian brain because we can't be in two parts of our brain at once. There's one simple thing that you can practice that will almost always upshift you into your midbrain. And I want you to write down one important word. It's called, and it may sound corny and it may sound hokey, but I'm telling you, it works. It's called appreciation. When we're in a state of appreciation, when we're looking for the good, or when we're thankful for something, we can't possibly be in fear. It's a midbrain mechanism. That's why, do you ever notice that people that are always looking for the good, never saying bad about anybody, always have a great attitude? They're very seldom in their reptilian brain. It's simply the act of practicing appreciation. It's an amazing thing. My mentor always told me to do something, but until now, until I understood this, I didn't know why. He said, the greatest salespeople I've ever met have an interesting ritual. I said, what is it? He said, they have a very interesting ritual. Before they pick up a tour, they give thanks. If you're religious, it might be a prayer. If you're not religious, it just might be, wow, what I really appreciate is that I have this opportunity today. It's the same with people. If we look for the good in someone and we say, wow, these are the things I appreciate, it's almost impossible to get into our fear zone. So if when we can, before we go on a tour, think about what's right, think about what's good, and you're thinking, oh, this sounds hokey. Some of you may be thinking, I'm telling you, try it. It's scary, and it works. It'll put you in the right mindset. Instead of thinking, oh my God, I better get this deal, or I'm in trouble, think, wow, I'm pretty lucky. I got a pretty cool job, I got a pretty cool view, and I get an opportunity to share the greatest opportunity in the world with somebody. Thanks. And go pick up your tour. It'll automatically put you in your midbrain. And when we can control our own emotional state, I guarantee you, we can control the emotional state of others. So I just want to close this segment, and I want 5 people to tell me one thing that they absolutely appreciate about this new opportunity that they have. Okay? Just 5 people. What do you appreciate about this opportunity? Anybody? Yeah.
Just using personality talents to make a living.
You get to use your personality talents to make a living. Excellent. Yeah.
Get to work in paradise every day.
Get to work in paradise every day. You might want to write these down. Write these down right now. Get to use your personality. I want you to write these down right now. Get to work in paradise. Yeah.
Sell good times.
We get to sell good times. Aren't we lucky? Yeah. Yeah.
I get to meet a lot of nice people. Exactly.
You get to meet a lot of nice people. Write these down. And I want you to look at these today. When you pick up your customer, look at them. Yeah.
Change people's
Yeah.
Every tour is a brand new opportunity.
Every tour is a brand new opportunity. Every tour.
We actually said that to each other yesterday.
Do you know how amazing it is that you don't have to get your own prospects?
Yes.
Write that down. Shell pays for my customers. We're going to work on changing that a little, huh, Ira? And that'll be something to appreciate even more.
Absolutely.
The ability to make more money. Great. Somebody else.
It's great to be a part of a team.
It's great to be a part of a team. It's so great to be able to work with wonderful people. I can guarantee you, you'll know some of these people forever. You're going to make some friendships here that you'll have for the rest of your life. Great. What else? What else? One more.
The nature of the business keeps you at a positive environment.
The nature of the business keeps us in an awesome, positive environment. Okay? So I just want to close this segment on the human brain and remind you, to truly be a master means taking charge of your own emotional state. The only way we can get somebody out of their reptilian brain is if we constantly practice and do exercises to stay out of ours. Okay? And one of the greatest ways to do that, there's many ways. There's taking care of ourselves, our diet, our attitude, surrounding ourselves with positive people, positive influence, positive tapes, positive books, whatever it is. And appreciation is the simplest, easiest thing that we can do every single day. Hopefully after that tape program, you're in your midbrain, maybe even your neocortex. What's important is to stay out of your reptilian brain. Remember, to the extent that we can control our emotional state, we can control the emotional state of our customers. It's important to keep a good attitude, keep yourself positive, do all you can, and that way we can share the incredible experiences of vacation ownership with our customers.